Hello, and welcome to another episode of CRT Sound System. This week we have episode 71, and we're talking about video game house bands. We'll probably go into a little bit more detail about what that means in a little while, but I'm here with Reese as always. Reese, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Tom. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm looking forward to going full on sicko mode for this one.
Yeah. I think you're the captain of the ship for sure.
Yeah, this is what I've been sort of cooking for a while, and I've asked a guest to come on. Roar, how are you?
I'm doing great. You told me to prepare like I was going to an all-day festival, so I have one novelty cup full of a frozen daiquiri and another novelty cup for urinating in.
Excellent, well prepared for it. Yeah.
Really, the
So
crown jewel of our guests for this one. Tom has been talking
yeah,
about this one since the beginning. So,
this is one
thank
that's
you
been on the
for
document for a while.
gracing the audience with your wonderful presence.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
sweet of you.
I think after we did the Outrun episode late last year, it got me sort of thinking about this one and sort of your experience with being in a band, and then I was like, well, there's a lot of video game bands that we could talk about, so it seemed like a good crossover of interests.
Also, the Jammer Lammy episode with Roar, number one episode of all time of our podcast.
Until Spotify nuked it.
Yeah, well,
Bastards.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this one is going to go because I was trying to cut this one down to sort of like our usual hour of music, and in the end, I decided not to bother. So we've got nearly 2 hours worth of music on this one. The episode is probably going to run a little bit long, and yeah, as I say, we're going to just go sicko mode on it.
Yeah. We are absolutely going to be extremely baked by the end of this one.
Absolutely, yeah.
Possibly, we'll see.
Yeah. So I suppose we'll to talk about what the concept of a video game house band, I guess. Like there's a lot of there's a whole little cottage industry of sort of like rock and metal cover bands of video games out there. There's no shortage of that, but like this stuff is more official or semi-official. The first track we played there was the Black Mages, which is doing a version of Force Your Way from the Final Fantasy VIII soundtrack. The Black Mages was a sort of a progressive rock band formed by Nobuo Uematsu in order for him to just pretend to be like he was in ELP. Because that's what all of his songs were about anyway. So it's really, really good. They released 3 albums. We're going to play tracks from 2 of them here, and like they're all covers of Final Fantasy music. And then there's one track that they did for a Dark Chronicle / Dark Cloud 2 arranged soundtrack that I also think is really good and was worth including. Either of you familiar with the Black Mages?
I'm familiar with them. Yeah. I have. I think the Black Mages and the Primals that we'll be discussing later are the 2 I'm familiar with on this list, simply because they're Final Fantasy tracks, and I am such a crazy person for Final Fantasy that I've definitely explored the Primals a bit more than the Black Mages, but beyond just sort of like putting them on in the background, I don't actually know a ton about them. I'm just familiar with them.
Okay. There's some good live concerts that they have as well that are worth tracking down. Like they really sort of went out to make a proper band of it, and it's more or less worked out pretty good for them, I think. I think in the end, though, sadly, they sort of had to stop doing it just due to some weird copyright stuff with Square Enix. Because, like I mentioned, some of these bands are official, some of them are sort of semi-official, and I don't know if the Black Mages is ever fully official.
Yeah, it seems like the Black Mages is like an employee resource group inside of Squeenix.
Yeah. Yeah, it's made of a bunch of employees, but like, and the person who ostensibly is the composer of all these tracks, so should have the copyright, but because copyright law is fucked. Square Enix apparently gets to
About
tell
to
him
say,
to go fuck himself.
Yeah.
not in this corkscrew world. You don't get to own what you make.
The live tracks, though, they're definitely worth checking out. Like they really sort of, they really lean into the to Nobuo Uematsu's love of prog rock.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like it's very obvious on the actual soundtracks what he's really into, but like when you actually get them translated over into like a proper sort of prog rocky kind of sound, it really starts to go off.
I mean,
Uh,
that genre just opens up when you give the keyboardist another 3 or 4 minutes to solo,
yeah,
where you can't necessarily do that when you have to like, all right, like Seymour needs to get off the screen now.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just watching Nobuo Uematsu just fucking go wild on the keyboards. Yeah, it's a real joy. Either of you familiar with Dark Cloud or Dark Chronicle? Out of curiosity.
No.
Heard the
No.
name, and
Oh man. Oh, okay.
that whole period of history was Dynasty Warriors for my poor ass.
Well, yeah. Yeah, the first Dark Cloud game, I didn't love it, but the second one, Dark Chronicle, just that was one of those games that really drew me in. Sort of a one of those really nice PlayStation 2 era. I think we talked about it maybe a bit in the Wild Arms 3 episode. Which is that whole era of like cell shaded PS2 games. With that
A
really
level
really
5
nice.
game.
Yeah, it's a level 5 game, so like it's got that really crisp graphical style that they were really doing at that time. The game itself is incredibly long. There's so much to do in it. But it's incredibly charming, and it's just got this sort of like I guess like a roguelike sort of randomly generated levels, but the structure of it is preset. And yeah, it's just a really fun game that can take entirely too long to beat, because in order to get like to do everything in the game, you have to beat every level 3 times minimum. And some of the actual sort of stages, like the broader stages, are like have like 60 levels in them, if not more. And yeah, they get really fucking long towards the end. But it's a fun game, and there's a lot to do in it. Definitely one of those sort of incredibly bloated PS2 RPGs that you could put 60 hours into without even realizing it. Like, and I definitely did that.
Yeah, at this point in my life, I was absolutely living in the worst college apartment in Boston, and like just getting so high that I just dissociated from my identity, and then just played Unreal Tournament for until I passed out at the chair. And when I wasn't doing that, I was probably replaying one of the Metal's Gear Solids. So that I didn't have time for Dark Chronicle with that busy schedule.
Yeah. There's definitely like it is definitely the kind of game that I would have gotten stoned myself and just like just fully just dissociated to as well. So
Yeah, I'm
but
seeing a
yeah.
city builder element here.
Yeah, there's a whole city building element to it and everything. It's yeah. It's pretty in depth. Like there's entirely too much to do in that game, because I've tried replaying it in the interim years, and I usually get to like the third or fourth major dungeon, and I'm like, this game is entirely too long. You mentioned Reese, when we were listening to the first track, the Theater Rhythm games. Did they do some of
Yes.
the Black Mages tracks for that? I'm trying to
That's
remember
a
if they
great
appeared on
question.
that, because like I feel like that game would really really benefit from some Black Mages.
It looks like it. The final bar line version, which I think is a combo, which is kind of like the big version with all of the stuff in it.
Yeah.
Is it does have some extra um, tracks, like bonus tracks, and one of them is the Black Mages version of Clash on the Big Bridge.
Oh yes,
So
of course.
it
Yeah,
looks like that's the only one. I could be wrong because
yeah,
there's
that makes
roughly
sense.
200,000 songs in theater
Yeah,
rhythm.
so much music and theater rhythm. It's wild. I'm trying to remember if we included their version of the Clash on the Big Bridge on that Final Fantasy V episode we did, or well,
We had
that
to
Clash
have.
on the Big Break episode. I feel like we must have.
I feel like I feel like if not, I'm incepting a memory that we did because like I'm almost certain that would appeared.
It seems strange that we wouldn't have done it. I'm gonna just check my files here just to be sure. Because yeah, that one bangs really hard. It's an absolutely ridiculous one. Yeah, it was the first track in the block that we played. So yeah,
Of course.
absolutely. Yeah. I think it would have at the time, had I not included it, it probably would have been a major oversight on my part.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like they always kind of pop up around the periphery of Final
Mm,
Fantasy stuff. I remember there being some kind of big Final Fantasy event that I watched streaming sometime in the 2000s, and part of it
yeah,
included a performance from the Black Mages. And they do similar stuff with the Primals now for like Final Fantasy 14 conventions, which we can talk about more then. But I feel like
yeah.
it definitely has a kind of like house Final Fantasy band quality to it,
Mm,
where anytime they need some to do a public facing Final Fantasy 14 performance. I seem to recall on Giant Bomb at some time they went to some kind of Final Fantasy event as well, and there was like a short set from the Black Mages. Um, and so I think that is kind of its maybe it was chained up a bit more than Utsumetsu would have liked. But
yeah,
it was kind of just like they would trot him out whenever the company was over, essentially.
yeah. And probably more of a concession to Uematsu than anything else, and just be like, all right, let the baby play with his bottle, like.
Yeah. that that is an insane way to describe Momoetsu. I
Look,
love it.
I'm just describing how an executive would think of a creative person. So you know.
No,
Yep,
you're not wrong.
that's exactly it. That seems to be like the theme of demise among these bands are some executive didn't want to pay anymore for them to go outside.
Yeah. Looking at it here, I think it's this. It was the More Friends music final for Final Fantasy that was performed in Los Angeles in 2005. Yeah, there's a bunch of orchestral stuff, and then two tracks performed by the Black Mages, and then back to the orchestral stuff.
Well, the same way that you give a drummer a 5-minute drum solo so the rest of the band can go off and do enough drugs to finish a set, you got to give the orchestra the same time.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. Yeah.
When does the drummer get to do drugs?
During the
drums
quiet
are the
ballad
drugs.
song.
Yeah,
That too.
Okay. That's true. All right.
I thought you were going to say on stage, but
Yeah.
Well, yeah, on stage while the spot is on the one guy who now has an acoustic guitar for some reason while he sings about some girl that broke up with him while he was failing college algebra.
I love that song.
Incredible. All right, we're going to jump in, I think, to the first block of tracks anyway. So let me pull up my notes here. So 3 tracks here from the Black Mages. First one is the Decisive Battle, then Hunter's Chance, and then the aforementioned Dark Chronicle track, which is Flame Demon Monster Gaspard. I like that little Dark Chronicle one. It's a little different to the other two. It's not quite as heavy and rocking, but there's a nice sort of groove to it.
Well, that's the Dark Cloud series, right? It's a little bit more earnest.
Yeah,
Your,
for sure.
it's a little bit more cartoony.
Yeah.
But it still can jam.
Yeah, 100%.
That Final Fantasy IX music.
Yeah, I was going to say the Final Fantasy IX one. Love that tune.
It's incredible. As I have to annoyingly mention its place in Final Fantasy 14. That's the PvP music
Oh,
in
is
Final
it?
Fantasy
Okay.
14. For one of the modes. There's
I presume
roughly
not that
7 of the
arrangement,
modes.
a different arrangement.
No. It's got its own
presumably.
arrangement.
Okay.
It's not. I mean, Final Fantasy 14 is a black mage's coded, even if it's produces too much content for.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Like, just between the amount of
Yeah.
original stuff and the amount of stuff that's just like repeated, like as I say, when we eventually get around to doing Final Fantasy 14, it's just going to be an entire sub-series of just like.
We could really do a year of Final Fantasy 14.
I think, yeah,
it's
you could.
crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. One day I'm gonna get back to playing more Final Fantasy 14. I promise.
You did the worst part. Well, maybe not the worst part. You still have to get through the post game and A Realm Reborn, but you did the second worst part.
And that took me long enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. What's your take on these tracks, Roar? Do these jam hard? You were talking about the solos, the call and response solos, and the Dark Chronicles track, and that was interesting.
Yeah, so I have like zero perspective on most of these games, especially the ones we just heard, but just like hearing the musicians kind of like able to take the songs that they like heard and converted to put on a PlayStation disc or what have you,
Mhm.
and just be able to take it and play with it like a child or a pet of theirs, deeply beloved. That's always fun. And I mean, like, every time a solo just goes over the bar line with just like walking through different modes and scales and stuff, I'm just always like, yeah, that's cool. I can't play pitched instruments, but you do that. But yeah, like it's especially like those solos at near the end of Flame Demon Monster Gaspard with the large fries and a drink. They were really fun, and it sounded like they were kind of trying to one up each other, which is also something I appreciate when trading bars with other people on stage. Just like, oh yeah, do this. There's always I feel a level of like daring each other to kind of play something maybe a little silly. At least there is for me. Maybe
I
the
mean, it's a better song for sure, but it feels to me just be like the bar band is playing Roxanne to close out the night, and it just devolves into like a 15-minute just like jam off between every musician as as they're fucking finally done with this gig.
well, that's exactly it.
I'm certainly sure they appreciated the gig more than a bar band playing Roxanne did, but still.
Yeah, they definitely didn't end the night having drank half of what they were going to get paid for driving out to the bar.
That's true, yeah. So yeah, as I mentioned, when after the third Black Mages album, they sort of just disbanded due to scheduling conflicts and Square Enix being dickheads. But Nobuo Uematsu still, I guess, wanted to do the Black Mages thing. So the next thing he went on was to start a group called Earthbound Papas. So are either of you familiar with Earthbound Papas?
No.
Okay. They released 2 albums. First one called Octave Theory, which the 2 tracks we have from, but I do have to shout out their second album, which is called Dancing Dad.
Yeah, that was a very funny pun when I was looking them up.
Yeah. And that one has like both albums have a reinterpretations of some Final Fantasy tracks, and then some of Uematsu's later stuff that he did when he went off to work for or as a freelancer and for Mistwalker. So there's tracks in Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey and Terra Battle and a couple of other things as well.
Based on the name, I thought that this was just going to be. I'm surprised to see other songs from other franchises here, because based on the name, I thought it was going to be tracks, from Bravely Default, the reference that Earthbound Papas is making.
Is that a reference to Bravely Default? Is it?
No, I'm making a joke. I assume it's a reference to Earthbound.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was a reference to anything or where that name came from, but
how is it not? Isn't Earthbound a Square, or is it not?
no, that's a Nintendo. Well, it's not Nintendo. It's made by HAL, I believe.
Oh
Yeah.
goodness!
Published
How
by
embarrassing.
Nintendo.
Cut this out. Cut out my entire appearance on this podcast.
It'll just be that would be a very, very interesting.
Go back and go back to the
edit.
other 70 episodes. And how embarrassing!
Give it some
Yeah.
real Garfield without Garfield energy.
You can't have your fake gamer girl. Your credentials have been revoked.
God damn it! Not again.
That's right. Back to the Call of Duty mines for you.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't want to.
You've got to work your way back up now. You've got to be a Grum's reply girl for 6 months before you.
Death first. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
I will be replying to Hideki Naganuma.
That's you got to pick a lane. I suppose you might as well go with that one.
Yeah.
Go with the funky uncle.
Exactly. It was never said anything problematic.
That's like collecting us transes.
Yeah. Sorry. Just thinking of that now. There was a definitely a contingent of people who were just like posting egg in response to a lot of his posts for a while.
I was one of them. Yeah, I still think listen, Hideki, there's still time.
Yeah. The Earthbound Papas as well. There's a lot more people in it, I think, involved, including the vocalist from Ace, who we were talking about recently when we did the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 episode. So it seems a little bit more sort of not just sort of going out to do covers, but they have worked on some actual soundtracks as well, providing some music for those. So I mean, there's a little bit more to it. So the other band that we're going to play in the next block is going to be the Primals. I think Reese, you could probably talk a little bit more about the Primals and what their whole deal is.
Yeah, I mean the Primals, I think, are I think a bit more purposeful effort from Final Fantasy 14 and Square, just because there's such a fan element to what they're doing, that they want someone who can play at every they play at every convention.
Okay.
You could as like bonus drops from, like, if you were to buy like the Final Fantasy 14 lore encyclopedia, you would get maybe an extra track from the Primals that you could play in your jukebox in your apartment in Final Fantasy 14. They do stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, as I don't know a ton about the band itself, but it's sort of just like, you know, they Sakin just works his fucking ass off for doing Final Fantasy 14 music. He generates so much content, and sort of like to the point where like he was doing like he was receiving like treatment for cancer, and was just like
Mm,
working like way over full time, and like just didn't tell anybody because he's just like, no, we got to get the music done. I don't want to have any uh you know, delays in that. So maybe, you know, I think we could say that, you know, Final Fantasy 14 in this case is a force for evil. I acknowledge that, and I still enjoy the music.
mm,
And so yeah, and I feel like Saken clearly worships Nuobu Umetsu,
mm.
and I think that it's not necessarily like one for one, but you know, you can tell me if you agree or disagree that it's in the vein of Black Mages in to some degree.
Yeah. I think from what I've heard, definitely, yeah. And they do they just sort of exclusively do Final Fantasy 14 stuff, or um, have they sort
Yeah,
of
yeah,
just gone, yeah.
almost certain, almost totally Final Fantasy 14 stuff, or maybe like, you know, around the edges, might do some music. Like if like there was for one um expansion, there was a Final Fantasy 6 raid where it was
Oh,
just
okay.
basically you're kind of like warping through time and essentially fighting the different bosses from Final Fantasy 6.
Yeah.
And you know, they like Kefka was a boss, stuff like that. But there were a couple of other Final Fantasy bosses. And I think when they were doing music for them, they were doing music that wasn't technically in Final Fantasy 14 anywhere,
Yeah.
but sort of like of the same vibe. So they very
Mm,
rarely play Final Fantasy music from other Final Fantasy games, but mostly they just do Final Fantasy 14 covers, and are
yeah.
sort of like a fan uh a fan presence more than
Yeah.
anything else.
And I suppose with Final Fantasy 14 being the sort of game that it is, where it's constantly pulling in stuff from other games in the series, it would be
Mhm.
hard to avoid touching on touching on those other things, or those other
Yeah,
games in the series that are sort of being referenced. You know, because as I say, you got your Final Fantasy 6 raids. I'm sure there was a Final Fantasy 4 one, as I recall, and a Final Fantasy Tactics one. So like, you know, there's
yeah.
um, you know, these, and
The
even,
latest one is a Final Fantasy 11 one. So
oh, is it interesting?
Oh
Okay.
yeah,
my.
they're going full
They're gonna,
Ouroboros
how
there.
long before they're like doing the before the fall? Have they already done before the fall stuff in Final Fantasy 14 as a like throwback yet?
They've done everything.
Yeah.
I don't know specifically. I'm sure that the next raid is going to be the Spirits Within, if anything.
Ah,
Uh,
maybe it's time to re-up my subscription. I'd love that.
yeah, I don't know specifically. Like this track, this expansion was all Final Fantasy 9 related, and
Mm.
it's not funny, but it's kind of funny to me. Is that there's all of this controversy about the new expansion. A lot of people are really mad because the new like main character that's not you is like a giant gay buff cat girl who is like voiced by a trans woman, and so like there's a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
static online about that, and so many people are just being like, can I just have my Final Fantasy 9 nostalgia in the game, please? And I'm like, you motherfucker, there are no Final Fantasy 9 heads. I'm the number one Final Fantasy 9 head, and even I don't care that much about it.
Yeah.
Don't you lie, you bigot. um
And Final Fantasy 9 itself is already such a nostalgia game. Like you're already just like you're getting nostalgia filtered through nostalgia at that point. So like what's the like
Absolutely.
what are you even asking for?
It's 50% mad because trans, and 50% just like the story, the like 10-year story was complete, and so they had to start somewhere. And they're
Yeah.
just like, well, it feels kind of like a story is starting instead of ending, and I don't know if I like that. And you're just like, go play World of Warcraft. Leave us be. Leave us be in the freak pit.
I love this slice I get knowing nothing about Final Fantasy XIV other than the slobbering masses that enjoy it have rotted their brains years ago.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because like you can you can do. There's a Final Fantasy is a little different than World of Warcraft. Is that it's not quite the same forever game. In the sense is like once you do everything in Final Fantasy 14, you gotta wait for the next patch. You can't just like go do PvP. I mean, you can, but like people don't. And so they just sit and simmer and vibrate and just become more
Like
mentally ill
7-year
about
locust.
things.
Just burrow underground and wait for the next blight to take the wheat field so they can come out and apparently complain that a cat is buff.
100%. The cat's first name is also woke, unironically, so which is also 10 out of 10 hilarious.
Yeah,
Woke
I
Lamont.
forgot about that. All right, so
Somebody
I think
would-
we'll go on to the next block of tracks. Yeah, as I said, we have 2 tracks from Earthbound Papas. First one is Eternity from Blue Dragon, and then we have Liberi Fatali from Final Fantasy VIII, and then we have 2 tracks from the Primals from the Death Unto Dawn Final Fantasy XIV soundtrack. We have Rise parenthesis Journeys, and then Metal Brute Justice Mode parenthesis Journeys. Fantastic.
Delightful. Okay. In that in Rise, the second to last song we listened to,
Yeah.
there is that is a raid boss in Final Fantasy 14 where at a certain point in the fight it stops time and you have to be positioned in such a way so mechanics are still going to go off even though time stopped. In the live performance of that, everybody in the audience, which is pretty sizable for Final Fantasy 14 conventions, and the band, they all just freeze in place while like the one person does like the doot 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 doot. One time I think it was Yoshi P, the director of the game, who like came out and did it.
That's
and
amazing.
it's an extremely funny moment that is only possible because everybody in the audience is a nerd and like knows exactly when it's gonna happen and what that means. It's so good.
Incredible. I love
That's
that.
adorable.
That's like sort of, that's like the equivalent of emergent gameplay, but for music.
Yeah.
Like, where you've just sort of like integrated an external thing into the performance. That's very cool. I love that. That brings me a lot of joy. I'm going to go see if I can find some live videos of that. I'm assuming there's plenty on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, there's they try to incorporate the like memes and stuff in there too. I don't know if you've seen that Final Fantasy 14 meme where it's like the same guy but like one is blue, one is green, and two are red, and they're like just like dancing through various problems
No.
to the sound. I'll see if I can find it. But they when the primals like came back on for the after that meme came out, they did a performance like as that meme where they were like all dressed head to toe in the different DPS, healer, and tank colors, and we're like, you know, it's the meme has a little story, and they were interacting through it like the story.
Aww.
So
that's cool.
I would say that's kind of like, you know, that's the primals for you. Is that I'm sure that they're very interested in being a band, but it's a band for the fans, I think, first and foremost. And I think that it's probably tough to see the Primals live without going to a big Final Fantasy thing.
Yeah, I can't imagine sort of like wanting to see that without sort of having the context. Like genuinely just like because it requires so much context for what Final Fantasy 14 is and sort of all that entire subculture of aforementioned weirdos.
Nah, we're gonna have the Primals opening for Asking Alexandria sometime later this year.
I mean, yeah, they could definitely pull it off, I reckon. I think, yeah, both me and Roar were a bit sort of put off our balance by brute justice mode as well, because I think we were both expecting it to start really skanking, and it didn't, and it was a bit of a shock.
I dusted off the trilby and suspenders for nothing.
It's just never for nothing. They're always waiting to be
almost. Yeah, there's always going to be time to skank. To go back to the Earthbound Papas, so one thing I did forget to mention about the track from Blue Dragon is that the original version on the Blue Dragon soundtrack is the boss battle theme, and famously sung by the lead singer of Deep Purple, which is not who was on this version of the track, but worth noting because you can definitely hear the the deep purple sort of style organs, and the vocals are obviously very very much in that style as well,
Oh
despite
yeah.
not being in English. And Roar sort of pointed out the bass playing in both of those tracks, and yeah, they're just absolutely killer stuff.
Yeah, as somebody with no perspective on the games, like when that crunchy rhythm guitar came in, I was just like, hell yeah, what a great guitar sound. And then I went to go on to say, hell yeah, what great cymbal sounds. And then like in one of the last bars, I think I heard my first bass fill, because it was just I think I had to stop and be like, who is that bassist? And Reese suggested that we break into their house and so I can jam with them, and that's probably going to be what we're doing.
Yeah,
After
yeah,
the
and
show.
I'll be there enjoying the music and rifling through their stuff. So like I'm such a big fan as I just like pry open their locked drawers.
Well, and that bass player, just to be clear, is Yoshitaka Hirota, who I think we mentioned before, with Teeps, I believe, when we were talking about the Shadow Hearts soundtrack. I'm not sure if that made it onto the episode, but we will eventually do the Shadow Hearts soundtracks with Teeps, because I fucking love those soundtracks. I love the first two games anyway. Less said about the third game, the better. But yeah, you can definitely hear that he's a bass player when you hear some of the Shadow Hearts battle tracks in particular. And man loves a weird time signature as well. So
Oh, after my own heart for sure.
yeah, definitely. So the next tracks we're going to be talking about is from the Sega Sound Team and from Blind Spot, or sorry, the Sega Sound Team Band, or SST.BAND. So we sort of touched on them briefly in your last episode, Roar, when we were talking about Outrun. And again, like made up of Sega employees, but this time much more official. They were sort of a lot of them were working on the soundtracks, and then sort of going off to do these covers for official releases and everything. Like, so it was definitely a lot more integrated into what Sega was doing at the time, with the SST.BAND. Either of you particularly familiar with their stuff?
Only when I
I
get super drunk and find them on YouTube at 2 a.m, and then I'm just bobbing my head until I wake up the next day.
Yeah.
about the same.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, definitely that kind of music that'll sort of, because yeah, they really sort of bring out the jazz fusion first. And sort of like connected to them is Blind Spot, who are a couple of former members of the SST.BAND, and they just sort of made their own band. They've released like 4 albums of different covers, and they do a bunch of concerts. They have like a live concert that I regularly rewatch, especially when I'm stoned as balls, because it's just myself and Reese have watched it together, and just like really, just yeah, it's a real joy to watch. I'll post a link to it in the description. It's there's a bunch of really good tunes on it, and just a bunch of guys having a really fun time playing some absolutely banging tunes.
That's definitely what I remember from watching the SST.BAND videos that I have, is that they just look like they're having a great time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always nice to see people who are like, especially for performances and stuff like that, just really giving everything to sort of music that a lot of people would consider to be frivolous, I guess.
Well, yeah, a lot
You
of
know?
people kind of overlook video game soundtracks. I'm guilty sometimes on
Yeah.
hunt 300 of the same monster so I can get a fucking Guardian Rathalos plate. I will put on a podcast and set the volume for the music down to 0, but
Yeah, sometimes you got to do that as well. For sure.
but yeah, it's really fun hearing these, especially like when you look at music from a Sega Genesis, like it gets crunched and quantized and packaged in such a way that it can get scratched onto a cartridge. So being able to hear it with like the people who wrote it going nuts and really enjoying it is always something that really strikes me as beautiful.
Yeah. And I think we sort of probably touched on that a lot in the Outrun episode, of just like how those soundtracks really feel like they were being played by a band, even though they were sort of so compressed and crunched to fit onto a Genesis or an arcade system. But I think just the fact that all these people were musicians, sort of outside of this, and sort of had a band dynamic going with them, regardless of whether that sort of dynamic made its way into the soundtrack specifically. I think that sort of allows you to get a feel, like where you. I think it's, as a passing breeze, maybe I forget the other outrun, where you get that sort of drum, the little drum fills and things like that. And we've definitely talked about that during the outrun episode, but like that kind of stuff that that you wouldn't just program into it, that's something that has to be sort of thought about as being played live before you can sort of put that in,
I think too, kind of going off of that, is that they're freed from the constraints of what the music needs to be in the game, which allows these sort of like enthusiastic, like very professional musicians to kind of like redesign the song in their kind of own image. And we've seen like in every single one of these tracks them having a lot of fun with the kind of like just the solos and the fills, especially kind of like as the song ends, it kind of always has like a more like bombastic ending than it might in the game, which does not mean it's like necessarily the game version is worse or whatever, but it's just like the purpose now is for it to be played by them, and they're just like letting it all out. It's great.
Absolutely, yeah.
Definitely agree with that. It's just a lot of fun hearing people that made the song that you remember as Beep Boop playing it and adding 37 extra notes and
for sure. All right, so I think we'll jump in to this block of tracks. So I have 2 from the S.S.T.BAND and then 2 from Blind Spot. So first track is Passing Breeze from Outrun, and then Final Takeout, which is from Afterburner. And then let's see, we've got Blind Spot with Field Motavia, which is from Final Fantasy, Phantasy Star 4. And then the next track is Sky High from Daytona, with vocals by Kaede Kobayashi. I love the little fade outs they do on these ones as well. Like it gives it that real sort of jazz fusion-y sort of vibe.
Yeah, normally I think a fade out is kind of a cop out, but I've been enjoying them here.
I think like you say, when you've run through the song twice and then you're like, okay, now it's time for fucking solos until the end of time. Like I think having those little fade outs sort of just implies so much more of the song that like
I think that's the difference that allows me to enjoy them is like the person in the booth had to go home, but the band did not.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were going to run out of space, so
that song never started and never ends. It just has always been, and we just there was like a 5-minute window when we could view it.
We observed it.
Went away. Yeah.
Just like opening a rift in reality and just there it is, that song for 5 minutes Peace out. Yeah, to go back to the Outrun one, I really, I love that again. That sort of like that live band feel that they get with that, and how again just to mention like how they were able to translate that into the game so well. Like let's say those little sort of like stops where like the drum fills come in and all that kind of stuff. Like it's just, it's always very impressive to me when I'm reminded of it.
The S.S.T.BAND stuff was really fun. I was joking that they had that high school band quality to them because I heard the percussion 2 instruments I was so often burdened with, like the kabasa, the congas. It just like all the other bands have kind of been doing it inside their 4 pieces, but the S.S.T.BAND's like, let's go spend $45 on an instrument to play it 18 times in this song, and then it'll go in a closet somewhere in Sega for all eternity.
Yeah.
Next on the Office tour, we have the Outrun Kabasa, played 18 times and not once more.
Please do not touch the Outrun Kabasa.
Yeah,
It makes it very upset.
Makes the whole building upset.
Yeah.
Somebody tried to play it and it became the third house in here.
I mean that's why I guess they all had to go off and do Blind Spot in the end.
They went back for the Kabasa and they got banished.
Yeah.
The Phantasy Star 4 one was so good as well. Like just as you say, just everything in 6/8 and just like fucking going for it.
Oh yeah, and like I said while it was playing, drummers just eat that Hemiola shit up. You want me to play 3 against your 6? Let's do it. I could do that all day, and I sound 10 times better than I might be right now.
Yeah, it's such like Go ahead, yeah.
That's definitely a riff you can play one-handed with a beer in the other.
It's like as enjoyable to hear as I'm sure as it is to play. Like I always love hearing that in a song. Like just that everybody's having a good time.
Oh, for me at least, like being able to play across the band like that, like against their 3 with my 2, like it activates some kind of simian node in my brain that just loves it, eats it up all day.
Yeah. And like the last track then, like obviously the Daytona soundtracks are probably better known for Mitsuyoshi's incredible vocals. But like I like that they sort of they tamped down on it and they got in Kaede Kobayashi to do it. She's on a couple of other tracks that the band have done as well, where she subs in for other vocalists, but just like giving it that much more sort of like smooth jazz sound. Because as much as I love Mitsuyoshi, he's a bit high energy for the way they went with that track.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. One day we're gonna do a big Mitsuyoshi love in, because fuck me, he's the coolest.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and I love just watching him perform. Like, nobody is having as good of a time singing as Takenobu Mitsuyoshi is. Like, no matter what he's doing, he's just having the best fucking time. It's great.
Oh yeah.
Just wanted to point out that one track that you were talking about just now is just like field music from Phantasy Star.
Yeah.
And certainly not speaking ill of either Phantasy Star nor field music, but that's not what it sounded
No.
like.
Did not need to go that hard at all.
No.
I believe that's the one that had just like a truly like upsetting amount of slap bass in there.
That was all the muted bass we were talking about.
Oh,
Yeah.
muted bass.
Yeah.
Sorry, I misspoke. And just I don't know. I was like I knew that song was coming up, but I hadn't heard the live version of it, and I was listening to it, and I was like, this is both
Just because they went
recognizable
and
and the
took the
least
ship
recognizable
Theseus
thing I've ever
approach to
heard.
their
This is
field music
this
from
is
a Genesis game
transmogrifying.
doesn't mean that it's not the same song.
Absolutely.
But I mean, that's the stuff I get into when somebody's just like been thinking about their song or the song they're going to play so much that they're like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get hamburger calluses on my hands so I could just play that bass along with the bass drum, and that's it.
Yeah, that's real sicko mode shit for sure.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we're going to be talking. I actually have 2 blocks coming up now of tracks from Alph-Lyla. So Alph-Lyla were Capcom's sort of equivalent to the Sega Sound team. Again, they're sort of like put together to be an in-house band. Most of them were composers on various Capcom soundtracks. Like there's a massive rotating list of people who were in the Alph-Lyla, but sort of like the first group of them, I think, was like Yoko Shimomura and Yasuaki Fujita, and a couple of others. But like their main thing, they are credited on a bunch of stuff. Sort of it's weird because sometimes they're credited as the sound team, and sometimes they're credited as the band, and it's sort of, I think it's a sort of similar situation to the Falcom sound team as well, when we'll be talking about later, where like part of that is deliberate on the part of Capcom, I think, to sort of obfuscate who actually was writing and composing and performing all this music.
And that was like
Yeah.
a holdout from like 80s video games where they didn't want people getting poached off of the credits for other games.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
wild.
exactly. And like their credits, even in the original ones, are their weird fake names. Like Yoko Shimomura is credited as P.
Yep.
And then you have Bun Bun, Pakun, and Woody.
It's
like
it's funny because I was just quickly looking over all of the bands, like just a Google search, and like as I got further down the set list, it became more and more obfuscated what was going on. Like what I found about Falcom was just like, what happened? Like
yeah,
it just
like,
examining an old battle scene from years ago today as myself.
yeah, like there is a project on Reddit somewhere, and somebody has a massive spreadsheet of like trying to figure out.
I heard about the spreadsheet.
Yeah, trying to figure out who exactly did what on what Falcom soundtracks. Just like based on like going through interviews and liner notes and trying to like look at game credits and everything, and just like yeah, it's a pretty impressive, and I'm not sure worthwhile, to be quite honest, given the amount of work that I've seen go into it. But shout out to the people doing that shit, for real. You're the real heroes of everything.
Absolutely. If the world was just, we would have like
Those people would be our
international
kings.
funding.
I'm sorry. Like,
Would they be our kings? There would be international funding at the very least. There would be the Falcom Academy where that guy would reign on a throne.
Like these people deserve to be able to do this sicko shit for our benefit.
Absolutely,
for sure. But yeah, we'll play the first block of tracks anyway from Alph-Lyla. So I have 2 tracks from an album of Rockman X remixes or arrangements called Rockman X Alph-Lyla with Toshiaki Ohtsubo. So the first track is Scrapping Beat, the Factory stage, and then Spark and Shadow Power Plant stage. And then just from the Rockman 2 or Mega Man 2 arrange, is just a general arranged soundtrack, I think, or and a general sort of medley, I think, of various Rockman tracks. So yeah, we'll jump into those and come back and talk a little bit more. Excellent. Yeah, just a real contrast between the two styles there, between the first two tracks, and the second track, or sorry, the third track, I should say. Yeah, we all of us, I think, had a real good time with those first two for sure.
They were so good.
Despite being almost unrecognizable from the game at places. But yeah, like that was like a whole album of Mega Man X remixes. I kept saying Rockman before because that's what was written down in my notes. But I didn't want to sound like a pretentious weeb.
Yeah,
who says Rockman.
the Hausu of video games.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's just that was what was on the notes. I apologize to everyone. I know his name is Mega Man.
No, we'll forgive you this one time. I mean, I think it's what the album's called. It's not the Mega Man collection. It's the Rockman X collection.
Yeah. And yeah, it's a very different vibe to the third track, which was a nice little medley of various Mega Man 2 tracks. A lot more synthesized. I think I would say, apart from some of the drums and maybe a guitar, pretty much everything was synthesized in those, compared to the very much of a live band feel of the first two tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Rockman 2, Mega Man 2 medley there was definitely more of just like let's run through a bunch of songs you'll remember real quick.
Yeah.
And I mean, like they did them very well. It was very fun to listen to. But I'm definitely all for the all right, we'll play the loop once, we'll solo over it for 3 minutes, we'll play the loop again, dust our hands off, and we'll go.
Yeah, that's definitely the vibe of that one album, and one I would recommend tracking down if you enjoyed that. Another one I mentioned during the break, which was the F-Zero jazz arrangements. They were official, but not like an official band one, so I couldn't find an excuse to include those here. But they're absolutely excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was it's been the experience this whole time. But during those last three tracks, I was just musing on how these were the like most skilled unsung musicians, and Roar pointed out as that's kind of just house musicians, studio musicians.
Yeah, that's your job as a session musician, is to never.
Yeah, but there's, I don't know, the level of musicianship involved for all of these has been incredible. Especially this last one which they have really almost no interest in playing the the rock band song. Not really, but it feels they're just like we would like for this to be a much more kind of down tempo jazz hangout song. And yeah, I guess we will incorporate some elements of the Flashman stage or whatever.
Yeah. It's really just a suggestion, and then from there you can you can do what you want.
It carried some the document is called The Real Book. Basically, people would go out and listen to the songs that they were playing out in clubs and just like transcribe them down, and eventually they got collected. So it's basically the head to a bunch of jazz standards, some Latin standards, and then just the chords. And that's basically how they played through those Mega Man X songs. Is they played the head, everybody got solos, they played the head, and they left. And it just, I really like that vibe that they got there. And that drum solo stopped my heart a little bit.
That was a really good drum solo.
I mean, that was an arresting drum solo. It started and I was just like, okay, I can't say anything. This is Rourke's time.
Yeah. Drum solos get a bad rap sometime, but I think when strategically employed in a good way like that, I think it can really improve a song for sure.
Right. You don't necessarily need to go like Animal every time. And I said, and I will continue to say until the day I'm dead, the keyboard continues vamping while the drums go wild is one of my favorite styles of drum solo.
Hell yeah.
Excellent. All right, so I think we will jump into the next block of Alph-Lyla tracks. So just have three from assorted Street Fighter games. So the first one is from Street Fighter Alpha, which is the Adon's theme. Then we have from Street Fighter 2, In the Trap, which is the Sagat stage. And then the last track is Guile's theme from Street Fighter 2, and it's called A Violent Emotion in this one. So yeah, let's jump in. just like the Guile's theme is insane on every level. Like even just the basic melody of it, and like something I often whine and moan about on the podcast is just like or not whine, I suppose, but just like a lament is just the way that like stolen music is treated, or not stolen, but like, you know, where somebody takes an idea and sort of reworks it or whatever, like whatever you want to call it. Guile's theme is stolen from another piece of music, which is also an incredible piece of music. It's by the band T Square. I'm sure I've mentioned it before.
Yeah.
And that song, I think, is called Travelers. It's fucking great. And like, it's just a small little section of that song that then gets transposed into becoming Guile's theme, but it's it takes on its own sort of completely different life then as Guile's theme, because just that game, you know, an iconic song and one of the most iconic soundtracks ever made. Like it's hard to sort of deny how much Guile's theme has sort of escaped containment outside of the like people who don't listen to video game music probably know Guile's theme, if for no other reason than that one meme back like in 2010 or so of Guile's theme goes with everything.
Right,
where
that's
people
what
would
I was
just
thinking.
yeah, where people just put it on everything, and it always works. It does always work.
Guile's theme is absolutely the one video game song your coworker knows.
Yeah.
Like it's
that isn't like the Mario theme or Tetris or something like that, but like
I would say it's up there
Yeah.
at this point. And speaking of, like, it is very funny to me how much a lot of the staples of video game music, you dig into it, and you find out it's just straight up been stolen. The amount of quote borrowing that Koji Kondo did for the Mario
Yeah.
Brothers soundtrack is fucking unreal. But you just gotta say, like, nobody put Mario on top of the music, so Koji Kondo wins.
Yeah, that's it. It's good as hell. The middle track as well, the Sagat's one, just like again an iconic soundtrack, and just such a great Shimomura style vibe to that whole riff. Like it just like you said, the girl loves an arpeggio. Like just and it's such an like the sense of epicness when you hear that, and like the way they sort of built that into the song, into that performance of the song, I should say, with the drums at that intro, and you're just waiting for it to start, because you can sort of you can hear the motif played sort of in the keyboards in the background, and then you're just like waiting for it to actually kick in, and it's really well done.
There's a weight to it. It's like you have to open a heavy door to get to the song.
Yeah.
It's you have to perform a feat of strength to get there. And I think it's perfect for both of those. I don't know Adon as much, although I enjoy that song. But both of the last two Street Fighter songs are, I think, very excellent kind of like adaptations of the character, and I like how evil they added. They made the Sagat theme more evil than the Sagat theme is on its own. For a character that is just kind of like nothing but sinister. Except he is less sinister than M. Bison. So it's kind of in his shadow.
Yeah. It is worth noting that Adon is Sagat's Sagat is Adon's master, I think. I think that was the relationship.
Okay.
Yeah. So they both have like the Muay Thai boxing style. And Adon is from he's in the first game, but doesn't really get a character until Alpha. Because nobody had any character in the first game, but a lot of the characters in the first game returned in Alpha.
The Street Fighter starts with 2.
Yeah,
That's I have played a significant amount of Street Fighter 1 because that was the only thing I had Street Fighter 1, but not Street Fighter 2 at an arcade in my youth. And it fucking sucked ass.
Did it have the
You
pressure?
don't have to.
Did it have the pressure
Adon appeared
buttons,
in
or
Alpha.
just like a normal 3-button or 6-button layout?
I think it was if I was too young to understand the pressure buttons if they were there.
I mean, even adults couldn't figure out how to make those work. So, but yeah, like I think that's pretty much the purpose of Street Fighter Alpha, is to just sort of roll all the Street Fighter 1 characters into the lore in a way that actually works. Because, as I say, there's nothing to the story of 1 really, and it's a dog shit game. It plays completely awfully. I would not recommend it.
No.
It's a really bad game. But yeah, as the Street Fighter Alpha 2 Street Fighter Alpha soundtracks are all excellent. That one was from the Saturn version of the game, which just had these Alph-Lyla remixes or arrangements on the disc. I'm not sure if they were actually on the PlayStation version, but yeah, for that reason, then they weren't sort of quite as expansive as the other arrangements were, because they've never been officially released outside of that, which is a little bit disappointing, because they're generally really good sort of interpretations of those tunes.
Yeah, it's what a wonderful time. I really want to get that get the Street Fighter 2 Alph-Lyla?
Alph-Lyla. Alph-Lyla or Alph-Lyra or Arph-Lyla. There's a bunch of different ways it's been spelled in different things.
That's Alph-Lyla for the puppy girls. So does are there? This is just an idle thought, but are there any like rivalries among the video game house bands? Like, is Alph-Lyla and the Black Mages, if they're at the same pool party, are they brawling? Like, I'm, or is it all just kind of like, we don't care, we're all studio musicians?
Yeah, I don't think I don't think anybody's really that invested in it.
SST might think they're better than everyone else.
It's a really missed opportunity not to go pro wrestling with it, I feel.
These are studio musicians. They don't want to go outside. Why am I at a pool party?
Yeah.
There's people here.
Yeah, because that's where Dylan told you to be.
Yeah, pretty much. All right. We'll talk a little bit about Falcom. Yeah, so we sort of touched on it earlier with the spreadsheet that's out there of sort of all the different people who are sort of they're trying to figure out who composed what and who played what and who arranged what on various Falcom soundtracks, because Falcom are notorious for really just hiding that, a combination of like not wanting to have their people be poached, and also just trying to sort of roll everything into this sort of Falcom identity, and sort of strip away the individual musicians, composers, and so what. It's not great, but it is sort of, that is the philosophy behind it, is my understanding of it. So there's like there's the Falcom sound team, and then there's the Falcom J.D.K.BAND, which is sort of like a subset of the sound team and is strictly speaking freelance. But they do appear in a bunch of like official soundtracks, official remix albums, official arranged albums. They do like live concerts at least once a year. There's a bunch of DVDs and stuff out there that you can get of these being played every year, and they're generally pretty great because, as we've covered on previous episodes, Falcom music fucking whips ass.
Yes. I'm looking at the spreadsheet right now. It is so fucking big.
It's huge. Yeah. And like, there's like, even if you were to just be like pick one album for each like Falcom game that's out there, like they have so much output, and for the most part you're going to have at least 2 separate albums for any given Falcom game. You'll usually have like an arranged one, and then just the regular one. and that's at like a minimum. So like there's so much music out there, and again, so much of it is sort of is you just have to speculate on who actually did the work.
This, I'm sorry to keep going on about the spreadsheet, but it's so good that the spreadsheet has like a history,
Yeah.
like the dawn of Falcom, 1984 to 89. This is so fucking funny.
It's incredibly cool, and I love everybody who's involved with it. Like, just this is what the internet is for: is people doing fucking insane, weird projects that nobody but them and maybe 24 other people care about.
I'm one of them. I wish my brain was 1% disorganized.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this is more valuable to me personally than I would say most medical research. It's just
And should be
it's
funded
what I
as
want
such,
from the world.
to be clear.
100%.
There's plenty of medical money out there. Where's the Falcom J.D.K.BAND money?
Absolutely. Seize Elon Musk's assets and give it to this guy.
Yeah.
Just in a big sack with a dollar sign.
I'm just imagining this band kind of like the Blue Man Group, how there's a different one in every major city, and they're just all the Blue Man Group.
That could work, yeah. I'm just thinking about the spreadsheet now has reminded me of like, have either of you seen that Faceball documentary that was just dropped?
No, I saw it in the channel, but I did not play Faceball.
No, you don't. Nobody plays Faceball. That's the point. It's
okay.
It's literally like the quest of like 4 people to get a 16-player game going in a game in Faceball. It's like it's a Game Boy only game, and they were just trying to figure out how to link everything together, and they made a 2-hour documentary about it, and it really is just like 3-4 people who just like decided to get obsessed about this one specific thing that, you know, realistically a dozen people care about in general, but because of their sort of enthusiasm for it, you cannot help but just be like completely entranced by it. It's great.
Oh, I'm gonna put this on.
Yeah, it's real sicko shit in the best possible way.
I thought it was just like the making of Faceball.
No, this is a quest. Like it's a video about a quest.
Oh,
yeah, it's
sacre bleu. Wonderful.
Yeah, we're big fan of Uncle Derek on the pod. I'm going to say, I'm going to speak for the rest of you on that.
Yeah, no, right? No. Tom's opinions chooses my opinions for me. So
fantastic. All right, so we will listen to some Falcom music. So again, all these from Falcom J.D.K.BAND. And I suppose the first track actually worth noting is from the first Ys game and was composed by Yuzo Koshiro, who is one of the people who left Falcom specifically because he hated how the credits were being worked, and that's why his name is on the title screen for Streets of Rage. Because he was just like, fuck you, Falcom, I'm going to put my name right front and center because I'm making badass music.
Dude, man, talk about somebody who deserves it.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we've got To Make the End of Battle from Ys 1, then Boy on the Wing from Ys 3. We had a bunch of different versions of this on the Ys 3 episode. The alternate titles for The Boys Got Wings, or there's a bunch of other ones. It's a lot of Boys on Wings have been translated in a bunch of different ways. Then we have Moonscape. I'm not entirely sure which game that's from. I think the game might in fact just be called Moonscape. But again, just one of their sort of compilation albums. And then the last track then is And Down a New Road from the Vantage Master Portable soundtrack.
Everybody on that bus is going wild.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, like the Vantage Master games. I played one that they released on PC. They released it for free called Vantage Master Online. I played that for like an afternoon once with some goons. And not the modern term for goon, with something awful goons, I should say.
Nowadays, you do have to declare.
When there's, I mean, there is still a lot of crossover, but yeah, it's goons were what the something awful cretins were called. And I've spent a lot of time gooning
Yeah.
with goons, non-sexual.
Yeah. But I think other than that, all the other games are released in Japan only, and they're sort of they're quite deep strategy RPGs. I think they're like based on like a hex grid, and yeah, you just have like I think you're like a bunch of different factions on a map, and they look super complicated and. Not my kind of strategy RPG. I like the kind of baby strategy RPGs that only have four nodes where you can be attacked from, like Tactics
Axe
Ogre.
beats sword, sword beats bow, bow beats axe.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I had forgotten that I included the Moonscape, which is from a game called Star Trader. I remembered as soon as I looked it up again. I remembered why I included it because it's a hilarious Billy Idol ripoff, and it fucking whips
that one
ass.
part. I always appreciate. I'm so pleased that you're just like, can you tell what this is? And I'm just like, oh, am I going to pass this test? And then the second the Billy Idol comes in, it was just like, Mike, you just wrote that whole cloth. It rips it off less than the Deadly Premonition Green Day song, but
Yeah. But yeah, Rebel Yell absolutely whips ass though. I always enjoy listening to either it or a song that's trying to rip it off.
yeah.
Especially when they're doing it so successfully. And those the first two tracks from the Ease games are just fantastic. I really love the vocals on on that version of The Boys Got Wings. It's so epic, and it feels like you're going on a journey.
Those were both very just fun songs. I really
Mm.
loved how the rhythm section drove the energy to them
Mm.
and just gave the lead instruments the room to kind of just scream.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And as mentioned, they do a lot of live gigs. You can go online and find there's a bunch of them on YouTube and stuff like that. Definitely worth watching. And similar, I think, to the Primals, the J.D.K.BAND pretty much exists just for the fans, or not just for the fans, but it's very much a way for the musicians to connect with the fans. Because I think Falcom is one of those companies, or I don't think Falcom is one of those companies that are almost as beloved for the music as they are for the games. And like even myself, I've played relatively few Falcom games. I haven't played any Trails games. I've only played about half of the Ease games, but by God, I've listened to all of those soundtracks, and they're all fucking great.
Well, I think too it's the Falcom is certainly known, but it is much more, if anything can be, much more of a sicko's proposition than even Final Fantasy. You already got to be really in just and unable to get out of that quicksand, the Falcom quicksand.
Yeah.
And so
and all of before you know it, you're editing a spreadsheet.
Another hand touches the spreadsheet.
Like starting my own spreadsheet fork to handle my disagreements. No.
Oh no, a schism.
Oh, of course, has to be a schism eventually. All right. I think we'll finish up because we've been
Well,
recording for
yeah,
quite a
yeah.
while.
I gotta say, it's been a long time, but these 3 hours passed pretty fast. And great company. It was great.
Yeah, it's been pretty great. Yeah, I've had a fantastic time, despite our
Mhm.
technical issues that we had there in the
Absolutely.
but where I disappeared for a while.
Can't have the
That well, you know,
marathon.
Mhm.
yeah. But yeah, Roar, do you have anything you want to plug? Anything to tell people where they can find you online? Tell people where they can't find you. I don't know.
I do my best to stay off of online because there's just so much upsetting crap
True.
out there.
True.
Sometimes I will appear. Maybe I'll post a meme in the Discord twice a
Mhm.
year. I stream about as often under the same name, Humidifier. Yeah, that's about it. Be kind to
Cool.
people. We all need
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it.
Roar, thank you so much for your time and generous expertise.
yeah.
It's always a special time whenever you come down and join us. You
Love
log
having you on.
on to the horror show that is the internet to hang out with us. It means a lot.
I
Yeah,
love hanging with y'all.
Yeah,
It's
it's
so
great.
much fun.
great. We'd love to have it. um, Reese, do you want to do any
Check out
plugs?
Video Games Are the Worst Thing on Earth, my podcast about being mentally ill. Check out my podcast, Existential Warfare, my podcast about being mentally well. And I don't know, listen to this episode again.
Yeah, go back and listen. There's some great tunes on it. Um, yeah, so you can find us as patreon.com CRT Sound System. We've updated all our feeds now, so everybody should be up to date. And if you can't hear this, tell
Yeah.
me about it. I guess
Yeah.
come find me. Be like, yeah, I've tried to post as much about it, but if you know somebody who's a listener and they haven't been listening in a while, maybe just let them know to update
Yeah,
their
let them know
RSS
Spotify
feeds because
fucked us. And we're remembering.
yeah, Spotify fucked us.
Gently remind them to listen to the show before we have to tap their kneecaps, not
Exactly.
after.
Also, it should be
Absolutely,
out
yeah.
by the time this episode is out, or quite soon. We were on a sister podcast, XVGM, to talk about video game advertising music. That's not the term. The advert game
Advert
music,
games like music from
Oh,
in
hell
there.
yeah.
So if you want to hear us talk about Pepsi Man and all that good stuff, check them out.
yeah, the difference between frosties in Europe and frosted flakes in
Mhm.
America, shit like that. Yeah, it was fun to record that episode. Yeah, I think we had a really
Absolutely.
good time. We listened to some interesting music, and we talked about some weird ass games that probably should never have been made.
No,
Most of them,
no,
I'm going to
absolutely
say.
not. They're all bad.
Yeah.
But interesting.
Cool Spot has a cool soundtrack.
Yeah, some of them had some good tunes. You can come and hang out in our Discord. There'll be a link. Follow me on Blue Sky. Follow the podcast on Blue Sky. Come on the show if you want to talk
Yeah.
about anything. Just let us know. We'll find an excuse to
Yeah,
put you
have
on at
us on a
some point.
podcast or come on our podcast, either or.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the last track is buckle up for this one. It's 12 minutes long. It's we're going back to the Black Mage as well, and we're playing Dancing Mad from Final Fantasy VI. So thank you so much for joining us, Roar. Thank you as always, Reese. Thank you everyone for listening.
Wonderful.